Hey everybody, welcome to Brick by Brick podcast brought to you by Mass Monster Movements. Today I will be your host, Luke Lodini, with my co-host Andrew Gapool, Eric Favors, and our special guest, Jon Kilmer. Let's start out. Jon, introduce yourself. Tell everybody, what you're about, who you are, and where you're from.
Sure. Jon Kilmer, I'm a content creator, I guess you could say. I am a co-host and producer of the Y&K podcast with musician Mike Stud. Mike and I live together out here in Los Angeles, and I'm just kind of one of his creatives, videographers. We've been working together for 8 or 9 years now. I kind of dabble in the music production and video production as well. I'm getting into feature films. I'm currently working on my second feature film, and I'm out here living in LA. That's about it.
Nice. And now, what's that like living with Mike? I know the Stevenson Ranch, Steve Ranch, big fan of it, obviously. What's that like working with somebody that you're that close with,
It's cool. And I think it's like pretty necessary. I mean, at some point you get too old. I'm getting there. I'm 32 and I'm still living in a house of guys, but I think at some point it's necessary, if you're working creatively or to any extent in the business world, if you're working with someone, the more like together you are at all times, the more you're going to progress. That's just how collaboration works. So, I mean, we've been doing it for a long time. We've been living in LA for 5 years. So I don't think we would have been able to accomplish as much as we have if we didn't all live together. So I definitely recommend it for sure. If you're trying to, work towards any venture, living together is definitely a big step.
Absolutely. Now, you went out to Long Island for college. You were a Hofstra University grad.
Mm-hmm.
What's that like? Because, I know you studied film and everything.
Mm-hmm.
You were in a frat. What was all that like?
Yep.
Where did this all get started?
Man, I guess if we're going to talk about how like my passions got started with film and music, I mean, I was one of those annoying people that knew what they wanted to do at a very early age. Probably right around when I was in 8th grade, maybe I started, picking up my first camera and fucking around. And I picked up the guitar when I was 14, fell in love with music immediately. By the time I was 18 or 19, I started falling in love with producing music and engineering music. I knew I wanted to be a film major, and for everyone who can't get into NYU, they go to Hofstra. That's why I went to Hofstra. It's
Long Island.
It's didn't quite have the grades, but no, Hofstra was a fantastic school, though. I was super lucky to go there. They had a really nice film program, and I really enjoyed Greek life there. Greek life was something I didn't really see myself getting into because I was like the creative kid that stayed indoors. I was an indoor kid. But I fell in love with Greek life. I think it really shaped me for who I am today, for better or for worse. And man, I was just always knew I wanted to work in music and film, and I knew I wanted to create, and just do something in the creative world. So I knew it for a long time.
Yeah, and
that's awesome.
Yeah, I did a lot of research on you, obviously, and how your career started. Or in another interview, I heard you saying that you kind of were in your frat house, and a guy moved upstairs.
Yeah. And
kind of approached you, and that's kind of how it all started.
Mm-hmm.
That's awesome.
Yeah, man.
Yeah. So do you have any is there in particular inspiration you had for getting into this? I know you said you fell in love with it at a young age. You're saying 8th, 9th grade, but as you started really realizing this is what you wanted to do, was there anybody you kind of looked up to in the field, growing up?
Yeah, I mean, I would say my passions really kind of started in high school because I was lucky that my high school had both a video art program and a music program. And especially back, I mean, I'm old. When I went to high school, it was 2003 to 2006. It was unheard of to have a video program in a high school. So I was lucky that I got to actually take those classes at a young age. And I think that especially when you're that young and you're, there's that much plasticity in your brain where you're being molded still and you're still being programmed. For me to be able to to like do that type of stuff in high school. I'm just super grateful. And I think that's what made me really fall in love with it at a young age. And then same with music. Like we had like these classes in high school where like you like basically like got put in a class and you're like in a rock band essentially, where like you're in a class with a drummer and a couple of guitarists and a bassist and a keyboardist and a singer, and you just fucking like jam for like a class in high school. And like that, it was just like
That's awesome.
super unheard of. But like little things like that at that early on, like it just really got me to like really fall in love with this stuff. And if we're talking about like inspiration, like in high school, I was like very influenced by classic rock, and anyone who was like a epic guitarist, I was obsessed with. As far as movies, like I just like, I don't know. I think over the years I became more into like the classic filmmakers, like like Tarantino, and then I kind of got more into comedic directors like Todd Phillips, who did like the Hangover series, and my favorite movie, Old School. So yeah, it just kind of happened, like it kind of happened slowly, Yeah.
What high school did you go to? Where'd you grow up?
I grew up in Boston. I went to a private school called Thayer Academy, and that was in Braintree, Massachusetts, is where I grew up. It was about 10 minutes south of Boston.
Dang, and that brought you to Long Island.
Yeah, that's a crazy change up right there, Boston and New York.
Yeah, I knew I didn't want to stay in Boston because that's like, I mean, I grew up in a town where like a lot of people don't end up leaving the town. Like my grandmother went there when she was 3 years old from Italy. My mother grew up in that town. All of her sisters and brother live in that town. And I was like, I need to get the fuck out of this town. So I went someplace, New York was a good option because, I was thinking about going to LA in California, but I think I like the idea of being like somewhat close to home, like a 4-hour train ride from home. So that's why I stuck with New York.
Yeah, no, Long Island's always a fun place. I went to school out there for 2 years. I played football at Stony Brook University.
Oh, sick. Yeah. So you were right nearby.
Yeah, definitely. I'm sure you've heard of Bordy Barn and all those fun places out there.
Yep, absolutely.
That's awesome. So now, you mentioned you worked with Mike, some other big names that you've worked with. Where, how did you meet these people? How did you get these connections, really?
I was lucky that in college, you mentioned that, a rapper like just pledged my fraternity and moved into the fraternity house when I was a junior. His name's Chris Webby, by the way. Who's like, a pretty well-known rapper. Yeah. Webby's, very well known, especially on the East Coast, Connecticut rapper. It just kind of like fell in my lap. Like I wasn't working with any artists, when I was, making music in my fraternity house. I was just making music to fuck around. And then that kind of fell in my lap, and we started collaborating and working for like a few years. And by the time I graduated, I had like a little bit of a track record where I could reach out to artists and be like, hey, I worked with, Chris Webby and these other people. It'd be cool if we could work. It gave me like a little more legitimacy, and it got my foot in the door. So, with people, someone like Mike, I was probably a year out of college, and I was just emailing artists every day that I wanted to work with. And, he was one of them because I had seen his music on some music blog, like goodmusicallday.com or something like that. And it just kind of worked out. I sent him beats, and he made a song on one of them. And then, we just kind of worked from there.
What song was that now?
It was a song that's not even on the internet anymore. I think he was so embarrassed by it, he took it down.
And I know probably almost every song of his, or I've been a big fan of him for a while.
It was a song called "Can't Stop Me," and it was with a female singer, Missy Modell, and it was like from like 2011, I want to say.
Oh, wow.
But a lot of the older, I think he took down a lot of his older stuff.
Yeah.
It's such a long time ago,
No, absolutely. Now, what was, I see that you've worked with Kendrick Lamar, Steve Aoki, what was that like? I think that's, you started out, Chris Webby, and now you're going to guys like that, Mike Stud, like that's a really big jump.
Yeah, the Kendrick thing was interesting. That was just a great opportunity. One of my good friends that I'd known since high school, he grew up in the Boston area too. He ended up getting very big into tour producing. So he put on this college tour, like 35 city collegiate tour with Kendrick Lamar and Steve Aoki. And I was just kind of like, top of his list as like a videographer for the tour. So like I found myself at like 24, 25 years old, you know, on this, you know, 2-month tour with Kendrick Lamar when he was just starting to blow up, and Steve Aoki, who had been a legend in the EDM world for a long time. And man, that was a fucking blast, dude. Because you're talking about, you know, doing tours with Mike back then. You know, we were just getting off the ground in 2013. We were probably still playing like little 400, 500 person rooms. And then now, you know, I get on this tour and we're playing like at FSU in front of like 10,000 kids. So like it was cool to like see that jump and like be in that type of touring world on that scale. It was pretty fucking cool.
Yeah, now
For like with
Go on.
working with these artists and, you know, legendary producers, like what did you learn from them? What did you take from, you know, their game and implement it on yours?
Steve Aoki, great example. He is, for the level he's at, very fucking down to earth guy. He'll treat everyone in the room like exactly the same, no matter, even if he knows you or doesn't know you. And I think that like being that humble and that friendly and that outgoing at that level, I think everyone should take, you know, a page from that book, because I mean, it's just like a level of human respect, you know, and it's just like in all levels of business, no matter what field you're in, I think you should always be that way.
Oh yeah, that's awesome.
Now thinking, you know, getting stuff started with Mike, you know, getting your TV show Touring's Boring, you know, this is Mike Stud. What was that like? What was the process like, you know, having people reaching out? Was it you guys reaching out? How did that all come about?
Sure. And just to give it a little context, if your audience doesn't know about it, Touring's Boring is a web series that we kind of just made. We kind of pulled it out of our ass in like the very early years of touring, just as kind of like a funny little web series about the ups and downs of tour, the craziness, the girls, the drinking, the partying. And it kind of like grew into like a huge fan favorite, and it kind of fueled our touring for a while. Very entertaining, by the way. And
Yeah,
after a couple, after a couple of years of it, we were definitely interested in the idea of making it into a TV show. But we wanted to be very careful because we didn't want to be like, you know, the reality TV guys, because Mike had like a music career that he wanted to, you know, be taken seriously and all that. So we kind of had to be careful as far as like doing a show on like, you know, MTV, where they wouldn't give you creative control, and you know, they could essentially make you look however they want you to look. And no disrespect to the Jersey Shore guys, but we didn't want to be like the next Jersey Shore, you know. We wanted to put music first, and you know, be well respected in the music community. So with that being said, it took a few years before we could find a network and a team that would like give us the creative control that we wanted, so we can make it the type of show that we wanted. So we ended up landing with Esquire Network, which is a sister company of NBC Universal. And it was just a fucking awesome experience, man. Like being able to do something like on that level, and like go on tour and have a TV crew follow you, and you know, have like input creatively every step of the way. It was a really fucking awesome experience. I recommend, even if you don't know who we are, this is Mike Stud. You can rent it or buy it on iTunes. I highly recommend it. It's just so fucking entertaining and authentic and real and funny, and I love the experience.
No, I watch on YouTube all the time, showing my boys. That's always a fun watch, you know.
Yeah.
You know, so now going into that, you know, a lot that we talk about, you know, Eric being an Olympic athlete, you know, Andrew running his own company, me myself being a college athlete as well. What would you recommend to the younger generation about branding? Like, you know, obviously, you know, you were part of, I'd imagine, the whole Mike new branding with just Mike instead of Mike Stud. You know, what's some advice that you'd give out to, you know, younger guys that are looking to follow in your path or in any entrepreneur?
Sure. I mean, if we're talking branding, I mean, when you brand something that's your own, I like to think it's always like a reflection of yourself. And it should be a reflection of yourself, because I mean, you shouldn't brand something that's not you. And when you do that, man, you just have to be like as authentic as possible, and you just have to kind of like throw shit against the wall until it sticks, and see what people will react to. And a big part of it too is collaboration. I mean, we talk about it a lot. It's about putting together like a mastermind group, and that's like when you're doing something and you're starting something of your own, it's like very important to you and it's your baby, and no one's ever going to care as much as you are. But eventually down the line, you're going to meet like-minded people who want to achieve the same things as you. And those are very important people that you want to surround yourself with. And when you're starting out, especially, like, you need those people to kind of pick you up when you fall, and vice versa. So I highly recommend just like surrounding yourself with like-minded people, and just being as authentic as possible, and just being as persistent as possible.
Now,
That's awesome.
In a world where like everything is like see something, get something now, do you have any advice for like some of the people that might be watching, some of the kids, where it's like, where it comes with like how long it takes to get something, to build like a real brand, or to build something of yourself in general, like some of the hardships, and like, it doesn't happen overnight.
Yeah, I mean, dude, perfect example is like podcasting, for example. Spotify posted that there's now over like 1.5 million podcasts on Spotify. And with that many podcasts out there, it's like, I can get why people can be impatient to like make a podcast and want it to blow up overnight, but that's not how it works.
Yeah.
It's like, you look at someone like Joe Rogan, like he spent over 10 years building his podcast, and now he's, has the biggest one in the world. But that's just an example of what it takes, and like the consistency that you have to put out, like a weekly podcast week after week for it might be 5, 6, 7 years before you start to see any traction. But that's just one of many examples of having to, and now it's just like we're in a world where everyone can get anything at any moment. So like I get how it's like breeding this whole new wave of generation where like everyone wants everything now.
Yeah.
And I say use that to your advantage when it comes to information and technology, because we've never had more access to information ever. You can hop online and you can learn anything for free at a drop of a dime. There's tutorials on YouTube where you can learn anything. So like I'd say, take that impatient behavior and use it towards your advantage of learning information and becoming more knowledgeable, so you can actually build a business and become more successful.
Yeah, definitely. Speaking on podcasts, I've told these guys about your podcast. Obviously, that's the reason why I really sparked the idea. What's that like? You're producing it, you're working it all the time, you're on it, you're one of the, you're hosts on it as well. What's that like being able, because you have hosts on there, Travis Kelce, James Conner, you got top guys, and that's pretty awesome,
Yeah, I mean, we're lucky. We're lucky that Mike's a pretty popular guy, especially in the sports world. So we are very blessed to have like those big guests come on the show, and it's great to hear their stories too. One of our first guests on the show ever, I think it was like episode 3 or 4, was James Conner.
Yep.
Who's a running back for Pittsburgh Steelers. Like, I didn't even know anything about his story. And like being able to produce that like episode and like sit and like listen to that story and like draw lessons from it. Like it's fucking awesome, man. And
that one's a must listen.
It's kind of a shame, it's a shame, like through COVID, the past 3 months, we haven't been able to have guests really, but I'm really excited to start having guests again. And just like, learning everyone's story is just so fucking cool.
Absolutely. Now, having all these different guests, Mike went away, so it was kind of you had Huey Mack on there. You two are like hilarious. I think you two need your own show together. What kind of relationships have you built with the guests being on there? Having guys, like Jon Conner's story that you've never heard before. Have you built any relationships now outside of the podcast with them?
For the record, his name is James Conner. I think Jon Connor is a character from Terminator.
I was going to say something.
That's Terminator.
Oh, my bad. I'm looking at something else. Oh, man. We can edit that out.
No, that just made my day. I just heard like Arnold Schwarzenegger's voice in the back of my head. I'm Jon Connor.
Get to the chopper.
Shit.
Sorry, what was your question? I got thrown off track there.
I deserve that one. Oh man. So, relationships outside of the podcast, from having on guests and then staying in touch with them or building a relationship.
Oh yeah. I mean, it's honestly the the two things we've been able to draw from it, from starting a podcast for us personally, is one is like, it's been a great way to connect with our fan base and our audience, and just really give them like a dose of who we are and, our mindset and our perspective, which is something we haven't really been able to do in a while. So I think that's why we're really drawn to it and we like it. The second is, like you just said, is being able to meet all these people and kind of get inside their head and see what they're doing, and being able to, it kind of like opens up your collaboration to be able to like reach out to people like that. Like classic case, like with the chug buds, like the chugging devices that we've been making, like, you see Travis Kelce on, so you see Travis Kelce on social media ripping a chug bud, and like, we're not paying him to do that.
Yeah.
And he's doing it because he wants to do it, because we introduced it to him and he likes to fucking party and drink beer. So now you have like people like him, like, pushing your product on his social media, when, it never would have happened probably if, we didn't really have him on the podcast, or we didn't really connect with him that way. So it's a great way to, link with people and to just network in general.
Absolutely. Who would you say, I mean, you guys are at 50 plus episodes now. You guys really have been on top of it. Who would you say one of the most influential guests that you've had on there?
Oh, hands down, Larry King live, baby. If for the younger people, if you don't know Larry King, he's one of the biggest interviewers ever. I think he's conducted over 50,000 interviews in his lifetime. So he's probably one of the biggest like TV radio personalities out there. He's getting up there though. He's in his 80s. And man, just like the experiences that guy's been through and the people he's met. I mean, I just don't think there's anyone out there that can give you more advice, than that type of guy. So we're super lucky to have him on the show. His younger sons are like huge fans of Mike, so we were able to make the connection and get him to come over to the Stevenson Ranch for an interview. But really recommend anyone to watch that episode, because he's just filled with information and just like so much influential shit.
Yeah, no, that's great. Now, go on, Drew.
No, I wanted to ask, like, anybody you met on the podcast that was like a completely like a curveball, like you weren't expecting them to be the way they were when you met them?
Yeah, actually, we had Squints from The Sandlot on the show. You know the movie The Sandlot?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, of course, the classic.
Yeah, his name's Chauncey Leopardi. He's and like he came on the show and we didn't know fucking anything about the guy. I mean, we just like we knew he was like a fan of Mike, and he was on this movie The Sandlot, in the 90s that we all loved, and that's all we knew going into it. And like, dude, honestly, like he's just like a fucking super nice dude, very smart guy. He's actually starting his own weed company, which is awesome. And like we learned a ton about him and just had like a really fucking meaningful conversation with that guy. And yeah, I recommend watching that one too, because like it's just, I wouldn't say it was a curveball, but like we just weren't expecting it. We weren't expecting anything. We weren't expecting anything bad, but like we just weren't expecting anything. And like to get that type of interview out of him, like was really fucking dope.
Well, it's like you said, networking and meeting different people, you learn all this different stuff about people. Like that's what it's all about.
Yeah, 100%. Mm-hmm.
I mean, how I got you on this podcast. You literally tweeted out who's got a podcast for me to be on. Basically,
yeah, dude.
I jumped on the opportunity.
I'm glad you did.
Just a few times, definitely one of the goats. I think what you do is awesome. What's that like interacting with, fans and, guys like me that like, this is like something that's I'm going to be talking about for years, probably. I'm a huge fan. So it's like, what's that interacting with people like that?
I mean, as corny as it sounds, like I don't really see, anyone who follows me, I don't see him as like a fan per se. I just see him as like, people who are interested in what I do. And I love interacting and collaborating and networking with as many people as possible. And I think that's like one of the biggest blessings of being in the position that I'm in and that Mike's in is, we get to like interact with more people than the usual person. So I love doing it. And like, I think I'm at an age now, I'm 32. I'm at an age where like, I like to, the reason why I tweeted that, who has a podcast is because like, there's so many people like with budding podcasts. And like, I just want to like, I want to motivate people to just like stick with it. You know what I mean? And like, I just want to like be as helpful as possible to people who are just starting out because, you know, I think podcasting is a wonderful thing in general. It's a great way to get your opinions out there. You know, it's more important than you know, the 140 characters on Twitter that you get. You know, you get to actually sit and you can talk and you can actually get your ideas out there rather than just like type like a couple sentences. So I urge anyone to start a podcast, and you know, I'm happy to be a guest on anyone's show, especially you guys.
Yeah, no, we appreciate it.
That's
Yeah.
super cool, super down to earth right there, man. We really appreciate you being on this.
Yeah.
Of course,
I got
man.
one question. Like,
Mhm.
what is some, like, you know, advice you would give to, you know, a young producer or somebody that's just trying to do anything? Because, I mean, I'm sitting here listening to your story and I just see you, you know, taking every opportunity and just, you know, going and, like you said, like growing up, you know, people stay in your hometown, you know, you left to go to New York City. And then, I
Yeah.
mean, now you're in LA. Like, it looks like you're just you take opportunities and just roll with it. Like, what would you give to a young producer that's trying to, you know, blow up, kind of?
Yeah, I hear you. Here, I'll take a step back, and this is really a message for anyone who's trying to accomplish anything, you know, to a high level. We talk about this on our show all the time, and we're firm believers in it. And it's really just like, it's just taking the fucking jump, man. It's like, for lack of a better phrase, it's like just not being a huge pussy, you know. And it's just like people are so afraid of uncertainty, and like, you know, they like to stay in their bubble and they like to be comfortable. They like to be in their routines, and that's fine. Like, I get it. Like, we're all creatures of habit. But at the end of the day, like, if you want to accomplish anything, you have to get uncomfortable, and you have to dive right into uncertainty, and you have to not be a fucking pussy about it. You know, I out of college, I moved to New York City, and I didn't have a job. I knew I wanted to work for myself, but, you know, I woke up every day and I just emailed a bunch of fucking people, and I made music all day, and I tried to connect with as many people as possible. And man, I had plenty of times of like, you know, what the fuck am I doing? You know, like, I don't think this is gonna work out. I had tons of doubt, but you just have to just fucking keep going, man. And like, you have to not be afraid of uncertainty, and you have to take risks. I can't stress that enough. Like, you just have to you have to bet on yourself, because if you're not going to bet on yourself, no one else is going to, man. I promise you that. Yeah.
Yeah. I see, like, similar with, like, you know, when I was trying to get recruited, like, I'm emailing hundreds of, you know, whatever coaches and trying to just get exposed and, you know, putting my neck out on the line. And it's pretty cool. I mean, going into, you know, my 5th or 6th year of college, like getting a master's degree, and you know, afterwards, like, I'm gonna go into the real world, and, you know, a lot of uncertainty. So, you know, hearing your story is very motivating. So appreciate everything.
Oh, of course, man. I mean, if we're gonna talk more about, like, you know, producing music, film, whatever. I mean, the whole climate has changed a lot since I started out. I mean, 10 years ago, there wasn't like this much technology and information available at my fingertips. So like, I don't want to say it was easier, but the come up was a lot different. I feel like now, you know, since technology is so readily available and information is so available, a lot of people are kind of like on equal playing fields now. And it's, you know, it's just a little different on the way you have to approach on, like, quote unquote blowing up. And, you know, I think the same rules apply though, of just taking risks and, you know, being around like-minded people, and just becoming as knowledgeable as possible and persistent as possible, and failing as many times as possible, and just not doubting yourself as much as possible.
Yeah, absolutely.
I
You know, like, I think something that I think you guys are really creative. I really am interested in a lot of things that you guys do over there in the Stevenson Ranch. Let's talk about, you know, we're in quarantine. Y'all had the Ballina Cup, you know,
Yeah, man.
Post Malone, Mike, you know, like, as they kind of started that up, what was that like? You know, you guys had Nelk Boys, MGK, Dana Beard, Barstool. You had a lot of big Travis. You had a lot of big names. What was all that production like, trying to get this in unknown times?
Yeah, man, it was wild. I mean, you got to give Mike all the credit for bringing all those people together, because I mean, they're all, you know, either his friends or people within his network. So kudos to him for being a likable guy and for knowing all those people. And also, man, it was great to do something. I mean, talk about like making lemonade with lemons. You know, we were caught in like a very shitty time, you know, in this world right now that we're living in. And, you know, we were able to do something we love, beer pong, which is something we probably love more than anybody. And we got to like kind of twist it into a positive, you know, and bring people together and raise money for a good cause. And it was crazy, man. I mean, we were operating the production of that thing was fucking wild. You know, we were doing the whole thing essentially ourselves at our house between like a couple of guys. And, you know, I assembled like a pretty small crew to like help with content, but we were cranking out like 20 pieces of content a day, you know, while that was going on. And it was a trip, man. It was crazy. You know, I found myself getting stressed out at times and being like, why am I fucking stressed? Like I'm making content for a beer pong tournament with celebrities. Like it's like, this is fucking awesome. You know, like,
That's
so
the dream right there.
I definitely had to check myself a few times, but dude, it was just, you know, it was a cool thing. And that's just like a good example of, you know, trying to make the best of a shitty situation.
Absolutely. No, that's awesome. You know, now thinking, you know, being in this quarantine thing, how have you approached it? You know, personally, I've been doing a lot of, you know, researching, a lot of reading, this, that, you know, what have you been doing a lot during this quarantine?
On a very basic level, and believe me, I fucking fell off track plenty of times, as most of us have during this time in the past 3-4 months. But like, I tried to adapt, you know, positive habits during these times, because you can, like, it's a slippery slope, man. Like, you see a lot of people online like, oh, I gained like 30 pounds over quarantine because I just been like sitting on my ass, and like I slipped plenty of times, but I try to adapt positive habits, you know. Like, one thing I started doing is just taking little walks around the neighborhood, you know, for 30 or 40 minutes a day, listening to audiobooks, just trying to like learn something new and getting out of the house and getting like a little bit of nature, you know. And I try to exercise as much as possible, but again, like, gyms are closed. It's really hard to fucking motivate yourself to exercise at your house every day. So I've fallen off of that fucking train plenty of times. And then, yeah, man, it's just, it's tough. It's tough these days to like just stay in a positive mindset, because like, I just feel like a lot of like our basic freedoms have been kind of stripped from us. And, you know, I've said it 1,000 times, but I've just been falling off track plenty of times, and it's hard to pick yourself back up. But I'd say, like, you know, use this time. I try to see this time as an opportunity rather than like a, you know, a travesty. Even though I know it's a bad time, I try to see it as an opportunity, because, you know, a lot of us are never going to have this opportunity of free time on our hands where we're sitting at home and we're not really doing much. Like you said, I would use this as an opportunity to learn, to create, to maybe work on your mindset, and, you know, just try to like work on your mental health, you know, and maybe do things you wouldn't normally do when you're, you know, working at like your normal 9 to 5, or, you know, whatever you normally do outside of these times.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So, you know, talking, you know, movies and stuff, you've been doing production, you know, where are you at with, you know, you said you had 2 movies, you know, you got a lot of things in the work, you know, kind of put yourself out there right now, and, you know, tell us what you got working on.
Sure, man. I mean, you know, filmmaking something, I always wanted to make movies. That was kind of like my ultimate goal. And then it's like, with that type of thing, it's like, where the fuck do I start? You know? I believe it was 2017 in the fall. I was just like, I got to get off my ass. And again, I use this term a lot, stop being a pussy, and just write a movie. Even if it sucks, just write it, figure out a way to make it, and just use it as a learning experience. So that was my first film that I shot in 2018, called The Primrose. I'm about to toss it up on Amazon, but if anyone wants to watch it, you can just DM me and I'll send you a link. And dude, it was just like, talk about taking a risk, you know, like, a movie isn't something you do in like a week, you know. It's probably like 1.5 years of my life of just like writing it, raising money for it, getting a team together, shooting it, doing the editing. Like, it was, you know, it was a big chunk of my life. And like, you know, especially making something where, you know, like, you know, not much might come of this financially, you know. It's like, it was more of a learning experience, and that's kind of how I treated it. And it was a networking experience too, because I got to meet a lot of awesome people who helped me make the thing. So Now, you know, I'm kind of picking myself back up. I'm working on movie number 2. I'm using this, you know, quarantine time as a time to, you know, write my next movie and come up with like a fundraising idea that I think is like very progressive and cool. I started talking about it a little bit, but I'm actually, and bear with me here, but because it sounds kind of insane, but I'm raising money for this movie instead of crowdfunding on Kickstarter, which is what I did last time around. I hate asking people for money. It literally just fucking sucks my soul. I'm raising money this time around by using music streaming platforms as a device to contribute money. So my partner and I came up with an idea to make sleep therapy albums, like fucking sound effects like beaches and waves and thunderstorms and campfires, whatever. Albums that you can sleep to, so you can like really rack up the streaming numbers while you sleep because you're listening to it on loop for like 8 or 9 hours. Smart. And a way to contribute is to listen to these sleep albums every night. And every night you listen to these albums, you're donating like a couple bucks to our cause. And you know, so we're working to like, you know, build, you know, a wide network and a wide community of people who want to contribute. And by doing so, they just listen to, you know, some sound effects every night that help them go to sleep because, you know, it's kind of a win-win. And by listening to it every night, you contribute to our movie. And our goal is to get as many people to listen to those sleep albums as possible, you know, over the next year. And we think it's going to raise a substantial amount of money to shoot the next movie.
Nice. Now, where will that be available?
So we just launched it actually about a week or 2 ago, and our sleep therapy group is called The Snoozers, and you can the Snoozers. You can search it on Spotify, Apple Music, wherever you listen to music. It's called The Snoozers, and you'll find it because there's a stupid picture of my face on it. And we have 3 albums out, and if you just loop the albums when you go to bed at night, it can really help us out. And if you forget The Snoozers, you can also find it at badboysofsleep.com.
And I'll definitely look into that. Definitely, I'm big on that every night. Or like, you know, we have away trips for football games. I always say to my roommate, I'm like, all right, bro, like it's gonna be a little weird. I'm about to put on some like sound effects to help me go to sleep. And like then the next morning they're like, the ocean's still going, but that helped so much putting me to sleep. Yeah. Oh my gosh, that's an awesome idea. I think. Yeah,
especially it's become so popular now, especially with the Calm app. I know like there's commercials for that on TV all the time. The Calm app. So like, you know, if you listen to the Calm app, I'd say fuck the Calm app and listen to the Snoozers because you're actually donating to a good cause if you listen to us. So
that really is such a good idea for funding. That's brilliant that you guys came up with that.
Oh, thanks, man. Yeah, it's really just like, you know, we raised probably 20 or 30 grand for the first movie, and that was fantastic. And like it was so humbling to see people like, you know, donate to that. But like I can't do it again. Like I can't like put my hand out and ask for money again. I just like, yeah, it takes too much out of me. And like I feel like this way it's beneficial for both people, and you know, it's kind of just like a win-win.
Good. All right, now you know, we're gonna hit you with some random questions. We kind of do this at the end of the episodes that we've been liking to do.
Let's do it.
So start off, you know, what's the best thing you've done during quarantine, you'd say?
Shit. I think the Ballina Cup, man. I mean, nothing really beats the celebrity beer pong tournament, you know, like being a part of that. Like, man, I felt like I was a part of something bigger, and it was a pleasure to wake up every day and to host the biggest beer pong tournament the world's ever seen. So hands down, Ballina Cup, hands down.
If you had to choose, what would be your last meal?
My last meal?
Yep.
Fuck. I mean, I'm an Italian boy at heart, so it'd probably have to be like my mother's chicken parm or her meatballs.
Same.
Yeah.
You know, now here's a good question we want to ask. What would be, you know, who would be someone that you would recommend for us to try and get onto this podcast? Kind of putting you on the spot right now.
I know. I'm trying to think. You know, we've had a lot of awesome entrepreneurs on our show. We've had, man, a lot of great athletes. Shit, that's tough, man. I think Squints would be a great guest for you guys.
Yeah.
He could fit right in with like
Big
Yeah, man.
Sandlot fan, so I'd love to talk to him.
Message. Heck yeah.
Don't hesitate. I'd say just reach right out to him. You can drop my name, say Jon Kilmer sent us here, and we'd love to have you on. I think he'd be a wonderful guest for you guys. I think he's starting his own business. I think you'd have a lot to talk about there, and he's just a great dude, really good guy.
Nah, that'd be awesome. Sweet. So let's wrap it up with where can our viewers connect with you? Social media wise. Your Twitter handle, your Instagram handle.
My social media is all at Jon Kilmer, and that's Jon, no H. But yeah, if you want to know more about me and what I do, you can check out our podcast. It's the YNK podcast. Those socials are just YNK_podcast. And if you want to contribute to my movie, just go to badboysasleep.com or check out the snoozers and start snoozing with us, because it's gonna go a long way if you get in the habit of sleeping to those albums every night.
Oh yeah. No, it's awesome. You guys got any other questions?
I just want to say one thing, man. I love what you said before about, putting yourself out there. I love the stop being a pussy mindset. I know it's not really like t-shirt material, but I love it. We use something similar. We always say, don't be a bitch at the gym. Same mindset. It's really, it's
I
not
think
PG,
it's like it's the East Coast to me, man. It's like the Boston, and you can't take Boston out of the boy, and like I always like the way I motivate myself is like you always have to have like your little voice in your head that like just tells you to stop being a bitch. Joe Rogan says the same thing. Like he says like when he's being a bitch in his mind, he's like, stop being a bitch, dude. Like just, I know you don't want to go run and do that run today, but just don't be a bitch. Get out there and like go sweat. Like don't eat like that fucking cake
Oh
tonight.
yeah,
Don't
you
be a
need
bitch.
that. That's totally that East Coast mindset right there. Just talking shit to yourself to make yourself do something right.
Yeah, exactly. So, and by the way, I take it back. The best thing I did this quarantine was grow a mustache. I think that's definitely number one.
Yeah, there we go.
Shoot, I shaved my head, so anything happened.
I shaved the beard. It grew back.
You look great, Eric. You look fantastic.
Appreciate it.
Not everyone can pull off the bald head look. You're really pulling it off.
Actually came from hang out with my buddies one night, and my hair was long. I was like, yo, I gotta shave my hair. So, like, this is getting crazy. I think I went up to go to the bathroom upstairs to my apartment. I go up there and I literally just started buzzing my head, and I'm sending it. I'm like, dude, I'm doing it. But,
I said, I'm next.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, fuck yeah, dude.
That's funny. But thanks again. Thank you for everything that we've taken from you. I think our viewers are really going to appreciate this podcast. So, thank you everybody tuned in. My name is Luke Lodini. This is Brick by Brick podcast. Thank you, Andrew, Eric, and Jon Kilmer today.
Yes, sir.
Next time, guys.
John, thanks again, boss. Pleasure to meet you.
Nice meeting you guys.